All right, let's dive into this. Welcome to this explainer designed specifically for you, the future business leaders out there. Today, we're going to untangle a web that is deeply personal for literally millions of people, but strictly corporate for you as a manager. We're looking at the real-world realities of today's immigration landscape and how it's going to directly intersect with the workforce you'll one day build and lead.
But before we go any further, I need to put a pin in this right now and establish a firm boundary. The information we are going over today is strictly for educational purposes. It's a high-level overview of the landscape, but it is never, under any circumstances, a substitute for secured professional legal counsel. When you actually face these issues in the real world, you absolutely must consult a qualified attorney, okay? So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the legal landscape and disclaimer, then the Padilla precedent, DACA realities in 2026, I-9 compliance fundamentals, subcontractors and avoiding discrimination, and finally, seeking professional legal counsel.
Section 1. Legal landscape and disclaimer. Since we just knocked out that crucial disclaimer, we're going to jump straight into understanding the human reality of these laws. Section 2. The Padilla precedent. To really grasp the absolute gravity of immigration law, you have to look at the story of Jose Padilla. Imagine this. Padilla was a lawful resident of the United States for 40 years. He even served in the U.S. military during the Vietnam War. But he found himself facing drug charges. His defense attorney advised him to plead guilty and actually promised him that he didn't have to worry about his immigration status since he had been in the country for so long. Well, that advice was devastatingly wrong. His guilty plea made his deportation virtually mandatory.
Padilla takes his case all the way up to the Supreme Court, and what the court ruled fundamentally changed the legal landscape. They determined that a criminal conviction's immigration consequences are so inextricably linked to the criminal process that the Sixth Amendment right to counsel actually requires defense attorneys to provide affirmative, competent advice regarding deportation risks. The court said it isn't just some collateral consequence, it's intimately related. So the massive takeaway here is this. Silence or giving bad advice on immigration consequences constitutes ineffective assistance of counsel. This ruling shines a huge spotlight on something we really need to understand as future leaders. The stakes for non-citizens are unimaginably high. Legal professionals literally cannot afford to just wing it. And as we're going to see, neither can business leaders when it comes to compliance.
Which brings us to Section 3, DACA realities in 2026.
You see, those high stakes extend way beyond the criminal courts. They bleed right into administrative policies too, especially the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program. Right now, ongoing court litigation has completely halted all new initial DACA grants. But even for those just trying to renew, the system is severely backed up. The data from 2026 is wild. The government processed nearly 70,000 renewals in the first quarter of fiscal year 2025, but in the first quarter of 2026, only 35,648. That's a drastic 50% drop in processed renewals in just 1 year.
And you have to think about the human toll behind those numbers. Processing times have ballooned from an average of 15 days to well over 70 days, sometimes stretching into months. Because of this, many DACA recipients are facing terrifying gaps in their legal status. And when that status lapses, so does their authorization to work. This is an immediate threat to their economic security, their ability to pay rent, and it creates massive, crippling anxiety for them and their families.
So understanding these intense personal realities, the sheer weight of a deportation risk or the panic of a delayed DACA renewal, we really need to pivot to your side of the desk. In this shifting, highly scrutinized environment, what are your legal duties as a business leader? Section 4. I-9 Compliance Fundamentals. Let's talk about the absolute cornerstone of corporate immigration compliance, the Form I-9. This is a mandate that's been around since 1986 to verify the identity and work authorization of every single person your company hires, no exceptions. The law strictly prohibits employing anyone who meets the legal definition of an unauthorized alien, meaning if someone doesn't have permanent residence or specific employment authorization, you cannot employ them, period. And make no mistake, federal agencies like the Department of Homeland Security enforce this through really rigorous audits. Picture this. The government decides to initiate an administrative inspection on your company. You don't get months to get your act together. Employers are served a notice of inspection, and you have a mere 3 business days to produce your I-9 forms, your payroll data, and your active and terminated employee lists. Literally, 3 days. If you haven't been meticulously managing those files, yeah, this is where it hurts.
Technical or substantive failures found during an audit don't just lead to a slap on the wrist. We're talking warning notices, incredibly hefty financial fines, or even final legal orders against your business. Your compliance has to be proactive. If you're reacting, it's already too late.
Section 5. Subcontractors and avoiding discrimination.
Now, compliance isn't just about the people you hired directly. One massive pitfall for companies is the concept of a knowing hire through third parties. You absolutely cannot shield your company from liability by simply outsourcing to subcontractors if you actually know their workforce includes unauthorized labor. If you know about it, or even if you just recklessly disregard the obvious facts, you're on the hook, exactly as if you hired them directly.
But here's the catch. You're walking a super fine line here, because on the flip side of strict enforcement is strict anti-discrimination. When you're completing the I-9, workers have to present documents from the government's lists of acceptable documents. As an employer, you have to verify their authorization, but you must avoid discrimination at all costs.
Federal laws strictly prohibits a practice called document abuse. Basically, the employee holds the cards here. They get to choose which valid documents to present from the list. You can't demand a specific document. Like, you can't insist they show you a U.S. passport or a green card if they have other valid options. You can't reject documents that reasonably look genuine. And you can never, ever treat an applicant differently just because they might sound foreign or have a different citizenship status. If you do, you're exposing your company to a completely different set of severe legal penalties.
Section 6. Seeking professional legal counsel.
So balancing this mandatory enforcement with these really strict anti-discrimination laws requires absolute precision, which makes our final strategy crucial. Think back to the Padilla case. We saw the life-shattering dangers of a lawyer giving poor advice to an individual. Well, business leaders protect their companies by refusing to guess. You need to run regular, systematic internal audits of your own I-9s. You have to implement comprehensive training for your HR team so they don't accidentally commit document abuse. And most importantly, you refer complex matters to professional immigration attorneys.
It's a crazy landscape out there right now. It is rapidly evolving with new court cases, massive processing backlogs, and shifting enforcement. Understanding the profound personal realities alongside your strict corporate duties is the true hallmark of a prepared leader. Yes, it's about compliance, but let's be real, it is also about respect. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Are the business practices you plan to implement robust enough to protect your company's liability while remaining human enough to protect your workforce's dignity? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Catch you next time.